Here at 6 o'clock, federal funds are on the way to help 3 southern Oregon counties recover from devastating floods earlier this year.
In addition to this pounding lake effect snow are these whipping winds that just make the conditions here brutal.
Hurricane Helene, right now a powerful Category 3 storm, shaping up to be one of the biggest to ever hit the Gulf Coast.
We've seen homeowners still on this street, and they are trying to put out the fire with hoses. But at this point, the smoke is so thick, I think we're going to have to fall back. Yeah, let's head back.
Hi there, everyone. It's now 5 o'clock in the East. It was maybe one of the last things we still agreed on as a country, the importance of the federal government's ability to help people impacted by natural disasters like those. Well, that may be the latest target in Donald Trump's promised public retribution campaign, because his administration just placed more than 30 employees at FEMA, that's the Federal Emergency Management Agency, on leave. Why did they do that, you ask? Well, the Washington Post reports this, quote, they signed an open letter of dissent about the agency's leadership, according to people familiar with the situation and documents reviewed by the Washington Post. About 180 current and former FEMA staffers sent a letter on Monday to members of Congress and other officials arguing that the current leaders' inexperience and approach harm FEMA's mission and could result in a disaster on the level of Hurricane Katrina. About 36 people had signed their names. The majority of signatories were anonymous. Same thing happened at the Environmental Protection Agency last month. 139 people were put on leave there following their own letter of dissent. In both cases, the crime or the sin, in the eyes of the Trump administration, was simply telling the truth in defiance of the Trump party line. That was also the recent experience of Lieutenant General Jeffrey Krause, former director of the Defense Intelligence Agency. He was fired, seemingly because he dared to provide an accurate assessment of the Iran strike that didn't sync up with Donald Trump's own appraisal of the impact of that strike. Trump, of course, claimed that the operation resulted in, quote, total obliteration of Iran's nuclear facilities. And when the now former commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics was so bold as to report as accurately as possible the data before her, the monthly jobs numbers, Donald Trump fired her, too, because he didn't like the numbers, didn't think they were good enough. Law firms, universities, news organizations, cultural institutions, we could go on and on and on, have already been on the receiving end. They're saturated, frankly, with Donald Trump's revenge and retribution. So, too, are some of the people who have criticized him. The most recent example being John Bolton, a frequent critic, a national security expert. His home was searched by the FBI late last week. So run down the list: storms, the environment, U.S. national security, intelligence, the economy, American institutions, cultural and other, people exercising their First Amendment rights. Ask yourself, who stands to pay the price for Donald Trump's acts of political retribution? It isn't just the people we named. It's all of us, 340 million people who live in this country, who are, with each new act of capricious revenge on the part of Donald Trump, worse off. It's where we start the hour with some of our favorite reporters and friends. Former Chief of Staff at the Department of Homeland Security during Donald Trump's first term, Miles Taylor's back. Also joining us, Puck News chief political columnist, MSNBC national affairs analyst John Heilemann is back. And Princeton University professor, MSNBC political analyst, our friend Eddie Glaude, is back. Miles, I will be honest, I have been thinking about you every second since I woke up Friday morning and learned about John Bolton's home and office being searched. And I wonder how you and your family are doing.
I appreciate it, Nicole. Look, we had the same reaction I think you did in watching it, which is this is happening now. This part of the story that I think you knew was coming and I knew was coming and a lot of us knew was coming is that he was going to take federal law enforcement officers and send them into the homes of his enemies. And it's something that we are preparing for personally. And, we feel the same way as you do in terms of how you led off this segment, Nicole, is it's not so much about us if we're on that list to be hit next. this is about how it affects everyday Americans. I mean, they don't need to worry about John Bolton and Miles Taylor and Jim Comey and these other folks. I mean, we appreciate the sympathy and support. We do. But those same tactics that are being used against people on the president's enemies list are those tactics that you just noted are reshaping all of the services and institutions that Americans depend on. I mean, I think about my friends over at FEMA who've just been laid off, and the ones who signed that letter anonymously who are probably being hunted and investigated. They've got families to feed. They've got homes to protect. A lot of them are the sole income earners in their household, and they too will be on the receiving end of presidential revenge. But then worse, the American people who depend on that aid and support from FEMA know that they might not get it because the president months ago said he's going to start making those decisions about who gets FEMA aid personally from the office of the president. He's not going to let a nonpartisan organization decide. He wants to decide if you get that aid or not. So did you like that tweet or Instagram post that was critical of Donald Trump? Well, now do you have to worry whether you'll get federal support when something goes wrong? That's the level of this revenge tour. It's gone into every community in this country.
I think there's something that people don't appreciate about the difference between Trump's first term and the second term. And I wonder if you can just sort of pull this thread for me, Miles. In the first term, Trump had all the same impulses. He wanted to do all the same things. And it's been borne out in all the great reporting since he left. And frankly, I went back and read your first op-ed as an anonymous and looked at your book. I mean, the warnings were there throughout Trump's first term, but there was friction. There was friction points with Jim Mattis at the Pentagon and Mark Esper at the Pentagon and Mark Milley at the Pentagon, and with, in my view, not enough friction points, but with some of the folks at DOJ, with Sessions, or the fact that there were people in there that had served Democratic and Republican presidents and simply upheld the rule of law. There were friction points at DHS, and again, not enough for a lot of people who oppose the policies, but there are no friction points. And I wonder if you can just explain what that means for the country and these institutions, Miles.
Yeah, look, I don't want to puff myself up or build up other people into heroes when we weren't heroes. I mean, as I've said before, there were no heroes in the first Trump administration. There were only survivors. But we at least counted on those people who survived the chaos in there to speak truth to power, to tell the president not to do things that were wrong, and especially not to do things that were illegal and unconstitutional. And I know for a number of years it got nauseating for people to hear, okay, you know, all of this axis of adults, they told Trump not to do illegal things, whoop-de-doo. Well, now you are seeing what happens when that layer of government is gone. And this isn't about Democrats or Republicans. In every administration, we should want people who have enough guts to at least say to a president, hey, Mr. President, that's illegal. Don't do it. We're not talking about defying the lawful orders of the commander-in-chief. We're talking about telling the commander-in-chief when something violates the Constitution of the United States. And apparently, those people aren't there anymore. And that means that the things Trump has fantasized about doing, which are dictatorial in nature, as you noted earlier, that John Kelly warned about, they are coming to fruition. And I look at things like the crackdown in U.S. cities. This is not a counter-crime offensive. The president is running a counterinsurgency campaign, but a counterinsurgency campaign against his political enemies. And look no further than what Stephen Miller said this week when he called the Democrat Party a domestic extremist organization. They are, in real time, painting the political opposition like terrorists, and they're using the counterterrorism tools of the federal government to go after them. It can't get more dramatic than that.
How does it end?
Well, look, I mean, there's one of two ways. We either cede that the United States of America is no longer a democracy, and we let it slide into quasi-authoritarianism, into full-blown authoritarianism, or we mobilize. And that mobilization has to be nonviolent, but it has to be massive. And it's got to be going out there and shining a light on all of these actions, but also actively resisting those actions. I mean, the cities that Donald Trump might deploy to shouldn't just wait for it to happen. They should be mobilizing now. We should see people absolutely blocking the sidewalks of Chicago and saying, hell no, we do not want you here. It's going to take that. And if you want any indicator of what that looks like, you can go look at East European governments throughout the decades and see the level of mass mobilization that's needed to prevent that kind of backsliding. I haven't seen it yet here in the United States, but if we want to stop this, we're going to have to.